Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back to another episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. Today is June 15th, 2020, and this is episode 59. I'm Bill, and I am joined, as always, by my quizzical co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Doing great. How are you today?
Doing all right. Amy, how are you?
I'm good. I'm distracted because my husband's in the background, so I keep my dog's wagging her tail somewhere, so I'm trying to figure out where she is. But otherwise, I'm good.
Good to hear.
Just throw the ball.
I don't know where the ball is. I can't solve this problem.
Before we get started, we want to remind you that the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is not a spoiler-free podcast, which means if there is something in the Cosmere you haven't read and are worried about hearing spoilers, you might want to go read those books first, then come back and join the discussion. Tonight, particularly, we're going to be focusing on Stormlight Archive stuff. We were originally going to talk about the board game Mistborn House War tonight, but since our last episode, Brandon has released a quiz. It's like a personality test where on each question, people have a kind of slider that they can move between two opposing personality traits like cautious versus daring. Once you finish the quiz, though, you do find out what order of Knight Radiant you would probably be in, and it has a description of that order. The descriptions do include some information we already know, but there's also a lot of new information that we hadn't heard before. So there's a lot of good, juicy tidbits to join in to dig into. And
one thing is don't do it on your phone if you can help it, because it's so much harder to see the results and do it. So do it on a computer if at all possible.
It wasn't made with mobile devices in mind, so you want to do it on a desktop or a laptop. Mm-hmm. So in tonight's episode, we are taking a deviation. We're not talking about Mistborn House War tonight. We're going to be talking about the quiz, and even more, we're going to be talking about those descriptions. For those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we do want to remind you that it is possible for our listeners to interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/InnkeepersTable. We record every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So please join us, take an active part of the discussion, be here, chime in, be our wonderful peanut gallery. Right now, we've got a few people joining in. They're all telling us what their Radiant orders were. So actually, before we move on, should we tell what our own results were?
Sure. Do you want to go first, Jordan?
Sure. I got Elt's Caller, which surprised me a little bit just because we've done another one of a different one, and I got Truth Watcher on that, but what surprised me more is second place was Windrunner, and I did not expect that.
Interesting. Amy, how about you?
I'm trying to find my results. So I got Edge Dancer, and my second one was Windrunner, and then Truth Watcher, and then it went down from there. But so I was not expecting Edge Dancer, but I wasn't surprised either.
And for me, I got Edge Dancer as well, and I've actually claimed Edge Dancer for years just because it fits a lot of my... I really like the concept of remembering those who are forgotten. Mm-hmm. And then my second was like only a couple percentage points behind, and that was Bondsmith. So, the glue that holds everything together.
In what role do you do this in real life, I wonder?
So the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. The show, of course, will continue to be free, but if you want to help us out, head on over to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. Even pledging $1 or $2 per episode would really help out as we work to keep the show going and to improve it. Patrons get immediate access to our Discord channel, where you can talk about the show and the Cosmere with other listeners. It's a great community. We talk about a lot of different things. We've got some great discussions going in there. You also get early access to bonus episodes. Actually, they've had access to our playthrough of Mistborn House War for the past week, and we will be launching, I think it's not quite public on YouTube yet.
I think it's today.
Yes, it is today. I
today.
don't think it's actually officially launched on YouTube, made it public yet.
Okay.
So that will happen before, like, basically before I go to bed tonight. That will be live. It's a great community. You'll also get exclusive access to other bonus content and other good stuff. This week in particular, we want to thank Michael Yu and Gumby. Yes, that's right. You heard it here, folks. Gumby is a supporter of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies.
But
I've heard he can do everything.
I'm pretty sure he was the first Mistwraith. Okay, so this quiz. So there's a little bit of a story behind where this quiz came from. So for those of you who aren't aware, the Kickstarter for the 10th anniversary leatherbound editions of the Way of Kings, that Kickstarter is going to be launching soon. We don't know exactly when, but they mentioned they will be letting us know pretty soon. Brandon and Team Dragonsteel have mentioned in a few places that there are going to be some pledge levels where you can actually choose an Order of Knight Radiant, and you will get extra stuff that is themed specifically around that order. We don't know exactly what, but he said there's just going to be a bunch of different things so you choose an order and you get stuff. Now, I saw one person on the Cosmere subreddit who was a little bit frustrated because he was like, but I want all of them. He's like, I want like an all the way in, like all 16 shards in pledge.
See, and now that pledge level will just be called Unite Them.
Oh,
I love
man.
it. I'm in. But yeah, so of course there are some people who are like, well, I don't know what order to choose. And so they've put together a quiz to help you determine which order you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good move.
One thing that's kind of cool, it basically is a personality quiz. But instead of, a multiple choice one that a lot of them are, basically it gives you a slider that you can go from, like, one side. One of them was like heart on my sleeve, and the other one was poker face.
Yeah.
And you choose.
That was like the first one, I think.
Mm-hmm. And so you slide it a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very interesting way of doing it. I've never seen a personality quiz be done that way.
Yeah, it was different. I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I found it much more difficult than normal to figure things out. Because I'm sitting here like, I feel like I'm sort of half on this. Maybe I'm more like
90% or 92%.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, there were one or two that I left at 50 because I'm like, I don't know that I'm really one more than the other.
And I did that too. Mm-hmm. But I ended up at like 84% Edge Dancer, so that kind of confirms my suspicion.
Mine was like 70 something. I'm gonna look because I have it on my phone because I'm smart and
Crap,
on my
I
phone.
forgot.
75% Edge Dancer, 71% Windrunner.
I did not save it, and I would have to go searching through our Discord, but unfortunately I can't do that and keep your faces up on the front of the
This is true.
All right.
Now, one of the cool things is in the description, they also say, if you don't like your results, just pick one.
You just do what you want.
So just well, then why did I just spend all this time taking a quiz if I can just pick one?
Bill, you're not
thinking of it gives you a better
idea
idea sometimes, too.
All I know is it's a good thing they don't show you the designs beforehand, because some of their font choices are just weird for some of these orders they have.
Oh, boy. So should we dive into the orders?
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the Windrunners. I swear Windrunner was built, like, the way they spell out Windrunner with that font. I think that's supposed to be on the front of a baseball team's jersey, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I was thinking an airbrush t-shirt from Florida.
You see, that works as well. Whereas Skybreaker, I swear that's just the font from Skyward.
The Reckoners?
Or Reckoners, that's what I meant. Reckoners.
Yeah, it's the Reckoners font.
And Dustbringer.
What about Dustbringers?
Well, and then you look at Dustbringer, and I just see that, and I'm like, and welcome to the Tiki Order.
I like them, so I'm just going to dissent and disagree with you.
I don't hate them.
them.
It definitely would have biased me towards certain orders.
Oh, the fonts. You're right. I wasn't even thinking about that hard.
I would have totally just looked at it and just been like, oh, I don't want that order. They have a really weird-looking order.
Yeah, Deathbringers is just a
How-
little.
How interesting would it have been to just be in the room while they're designing this quiz?
Been
Oh,
pretty
man.
interesting.
But yeah. Okay, so the first order that we hear about is the Windrunners, which is probably the order we already know the most about. Mm-hmm. Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you find so much about it through Kaladin.
Their
and
colors,
his
navy
squares.
blue and gray.
Are the colors specific? Like,
I think just going by the colors they use in the results.
Okay.
I really like I like the color combinations of a lot of these, although a few of them I'm just like, I can barely see it. Why'd you go with that? But that's just the designer in
Edge
me.
Dancer was a little bit harder with the
imagine
color
how
contrast.
it is for me.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Poor
The
guy.
Windrunner was interesting because I just didn't expect to really, what were the odds we're going to learn something from it that we hadn't already heard? And I actually kind of liked its angle that it took.
What do you mean?
Well, so like talking about they tend to attract big sibling types. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, and that's definitely what we've seen. But just the line about they tend to see, where is it? They're primarily scouts, though they often work as special forces groups, able to deliver teams of Radiance behind enemy lines for secret missions. And I'd never thought of them in the vein of special forces, you know?
I don't know. I mean, it's just like
Navy SEALs.
surgical
That's kinda how
strikes.
I
It makes
think of it.
sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's just I had never thought of them in that way before. It was sort of this, now that you point it out, it seems really obvious.
Yeah, they talk about that a little bit more in the Edge Dancer section, where apparently Edge Dancers will work with a team of either Windrunners or Skybreakers. Notice or. It doesn't say
Not
and
both.
or and. It's or, because there's some roughness between those two.
Well, there's a tension between their oaths that's pretty stark, and both their oaths don't make them, because you can sort of look at the Elts Callers and Truth Watchers, and they have some tension between their oaths a little bit, but they're not really going to come into conflict over anything, whereas a situation for Windrunners and Skybreakers, who are very active orders and in the field, that could get to some real issues. And I'm hoping to see some of that between Seth and Kaladin.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, because both of them have this idolization of Dalinar going on.
Well, and on top
I mean-
of it, they also have already fought before.
Yes, they have.
Yep.
No, that's one of the things I'm actually most interested for, like the early pages of. I
does
feel like there's
Seth
going to
fit
be
into everything?
some strife.
Because I can see them making sure he does not wear white anymore, because otherwise that's going to have a lot of people coming for revenge or not trusting him at all, just because if they recognize him as having been the assassin in white, I can see that causing.
At the same time, I could also see them sticking with it just because of the power behind that.
Yes, I mean it would be. I'm not sure how Dalinar would play that, and I guess Yasna would have some voice in that too, because she's going to be queen, right?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming she'd have some. It's Yasna. She's going to have a voice in it. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yasna with a voice? Huh, interesting.
What?
That shrinking violet.
I always
No,
picture
and-
her in purple clothes too.
Yeah. So
Anyway.
it says that they are typically the most like your conventional soldiers, except that they can fly.
Which is
Cool,
fairly
why not?
unconventional, to be fair.
But also the fact that they have more squires than we already know this. Brandon's told us this than other orders, and focus more on mastering their weapons. So I hate to use this term. It's almost like they're the cannon fodder.
Aw.
Just there's like I
there's-
don't mean it in that's not the right term, but it's just they are
The rank and
overwhelming
file, like-
force. Yes, they're the
Yeah,
rank
but
and file
but
soldiers.
it's interesting. I thought there was another order later on. one
The
of
Stone
ones-
Wards are also
Stone Wards.
and there's
Yeah.
and there's apparently some dispute between the two,
dispute between
which are
them.
the
It's
best.
like who's actually this? Because they kind of don't agree on that.
It's
there
interesting
was-
that it points out a few times that there's dispute between this order and this order, and this order and this order.
Yeah, that was interesting.
But I like it because it mirrors like armed forces in real life. Like we always hear, if you know anyone in the armed forces, they're constantly giving each other guff for being whatever force they're in.
Yeah, my father-in-law was in the Air Force, I think the Air Force, and like he was a great guy, but like apparently like from what I remember, usually people think Air Force is more lazy or something like that. It's like the stereotype with it, or is that the Navy?
No, it's definitely the Air Force, because they get to stay up in the sky while the rest of them are fighting on the ground. Which my grandfather was Air Force, and he would always make fun of the idiots who had to be on the ground, even though all he was a dentist for them. So,
Be careful. I have two brothers who were both in the Air Force.
I have nothing against them. I just know that's the stereotype.
I also have a grandpa who was a general in the Army, though. So, we've got multiple.
You've got all that stuff.
Look at Bill scoreboarding us.
Dude, that's not what I was doing, and you know it.
I know, but it's more fun to pretend it was.
I think both my grandpas were in the Army. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wars, though. Yeah.
The other thing that's kind of cool about each of these order descriptions is each of them has just a simple sentence that says, I will blank.
Such and such, yeah. I will verb.
So for Windrunners, it is I will protect.
Which if you know Kaladin, fits.
Yeah, we kind of gathered that much. So let's move to the Skybreakers. Now, who do we know in this order?
Yeah, this one surprised me a lot in that it made me see them in a much better light, and I think it has helped that you have Nail as one of your primary sources, and he's kind of
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just a smidge.
Yeah, no, there was a sentence in there that I actually quoted word for word in the notes here. It says, note that the current incarnation, led by the Herald Nail in his madness, is more rigid than the Ancient Order, which understood that the law was not perfect, but instead represented an ideal to try to reach over time. It's an interesting way of looking at it. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because it allows some room for flexibility in trying to figure out what you're going to be going forward, whereas right now, Nail is definitely just pointing people in the direction of pick it, stick with it, let's go, come on, move along, people.
And maim and murder.
Yeah, again, very, very rigid. It says they're themed toward justice, fighting for causes, and enforcing social rules.
Mm-hmm.
I love this. They believe that nobody, not even other Radiants, were above being questioned. So they're really focused on consistency. Mm-hmm. It's like there are rules, and they apply to me and they apply to you. It doesn't matter who you are. No one is above the law.
And they were very concerned about the more power you have, which Radiants are going to have, that there's the higher likelihood that they're going to abuse that power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
the other thing I found interesting about this was just the line, this sometimes gave them a bad reputation among the more free-thinking orders of knights, but the Skybreakers, and then in parentheses, at their best, were not merciless. Mm-hmm. Which, that is definitely what they're being held up as right now, as there is no mercy. It's just justice.
Mm-hmm.
Our first introduction to Nail, when he was just called Darkness.
Yeah, that's scary.
But you see him going through and being just very strict and merciless, very cold about what he's doing, going out and rounding up these potential Radiants and just snuffing them out beforehand.
Yeah,
just very, very
gentle word.
Mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that was when Lift broke him. That was what she pointed out, was just, she's just like, which you feel all the time, those emotions. And he just pauses and just like, that's a point.
I don't like the feeling.
Yep. No, they were the enforcers. They were tasked with keeping the peace, and they worked to contain dangerous and dark forces. Now, that was an interesting way of describing it, I felt. Mm-hmm. It almost feels like they're the ones who... It kind of expands, they police themselves and they police the area, but they also... It expands beyond the mundane. again, dangerous and dark forces. That sounds, very, very, which is interesting because if I recall correct, now they've aligned themselves with Odium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. That seems like a very dangerous and dark force to me. I don't know about you, but...
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that they still have this sort of free agency about them. The fact that, because Seth said, is like, I'm sorry I didn't choose this. And he's like, no, it's fine. Just, it's we all have to choose our own path because, the law is, man isn't perfect. So you chose yours. And they're still going to train him and everything, but then see him on the battlefield and try and kill him later, I guess.
It's a very interesting concept.
It makes me wonder if there are going to be other Skybreakers who are going to break off from Nail.
I mean, I'd be shocked if they don't, frankly.
Yeah.
Yep. It also says the Order welcomed those who want to find true justice, defend the innocent, and punish the guilty. It almost sounds like they're the lawyers of the group as well.
Actually, I was thinking more internal affairs.
I've thought internal affairs a few times when but just find true justice, defend the innocent. I'm like, okay, so that's your public defender, and punish the guilty. Okay, that's your prosecutor.
I almost want to hear dun dun dun.
Just have Law and Order music.
Dun, dun.
Yeah. My voice isn't deep enough for it, but yeah, that.
Jordan, I'm amazed that we've said the word justice so many times and you haven't once made the Batman voice.
I'm biding my time, but now that we're here, I can't not do it. Justice.
So moving on from the Skybreakers, next is the Dustbringers.
Oh, man. This
Now,
one really surprised me.
The representative we have of the Dustbringers in the books right now is Malata. There's a lot of speculation that eventually Ash is going to become one as well, but that,
we don't know.
We don't get her book until, back half of the back half, of the back five. So, it's like book 8 or 9, I think, is hers.
Oh, goodness. That's forever.
Could be a while.
Forever. Yeah.
But I am of the opinion that she's going to be a Dustbringer. Now, this one, we got a lot of really interesting new information about. Because as they make their oaths, that they gradually get their new powers rather than, right at the very beginning, suddenly you can do everything. They just gradually get it because as they make each oath, they're more prepared to hold that power. With great power comes responsibility. I heard somebody say that once.
Yeah.
And, but apparently that was very different from the others, the other orders. Also, I love the fact that they're very sensitive about their name.
Yeah, they prefer to be called releasers because I can see how they would like that better.
Yeah, one's definitely a lot more friendly than the other.
Yeah.
The problem
One's
though
their
is
PR name.
the problem is that it's not a compound word.
Yeah.
All of the other orders have compound words as their names.
And clearly that's how we do this.
It's
You
important.
follow the pattern.
Pattern.
I don't follow tropes, you follow tropes.
It also says they like to tinker, dig down into things, and break them to see what makes them work. Okay, something came to mind when I first read that sentence. I'm wondering if y'all have anything that really
With
you think of.
taking stuff apart, or
Have either of y'all seen the show Heroes?
Ah, Siler.
Siler.
Oh,
This is Siler.
That's positive.
This is Zachary Quinto before he became Spock.
oh man. Oh.
But again, that's part of the order is their oaths are themed towards responsibility, towards controlling and mastering that power. The sentence is, I will seek self-mastery for them.
Yeah.
Well,
'Cause
No, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Go ahead, Jordan.
No, you go ahead.
Fine.
Somebody say something.
So, my thoughts like half formed here.
Oh,
I
so
was-
I was your meat puppet here.
Go ahead. I lost what
Okay.
it was. Go ahead.
The thing I like about it,
Jordan.
for one, is just the simple fact that I love that they're they do feel misunderstood, and they're trying to follow the rules type of thing. But they have an issue with the fact that they just say, okay, we're about self-mastery. All right. What does that mean? And it harkens to the most important part of having power, the fact that you have to be responsible with that power. It reminds me a lot of the concept of, what was it? The line in Jurassic Park. I always quote it slightly wrong, where he says, you always were asking, could you do something? You never bothered to ask, should you?
Should you? Yeah. That may not be the exact quote, but that...
Yeah, it's something to that effect.
I think it's Malcolm.
And it's just I think it's sort of just how this order feels.
Well, it's not just that, though. I mean, if you look at the powers that they have, they're destructive abilities. It's the kind of thing, if you haven't, mastered and you self-control with that kind of ability, you could really ruin everything.
Yeah, that was what I was going to comment earlier, was that it's a good thing that they get their power slowly, because if they did one of their bigger, more powerful, destructive ones, and they didn't know what they were doing and weren't ready for it yet, massive consequences, versus a Windrunner does something and sticks a table to a wall that doesn't destroy. I mean, it's not great, but it's not clearing a battlefield of people or something.
Well, and that really is what makes you worry about Mulata, because one, she already seems a little bit unstable, but two, her Sprin is very, very vengeful.
Oh yeah,
and she's not bound by the same sorts of oaths yet. It's a very, very different sort of. Just the relationship is very different. So who knows what's going to end up happening with her. She worries me. Yeah. And I have a suspicion that in this next book, that's where, because Brandon has said that we're going to start seeing more Dustbringers in Rhythm of War. And so if that's the case, I think that'll be more focused on the Order, which means I think she's going to do something. I think
I mean, there's only so long that her and the Taravangian and everybody are going to be able to stay under the diagram. Yeah, there's only so long they're going to be able to stay under the radar.
Yeah, I think Rhythm of War is where the Chekhov's gun that is Mulata gets fired. That's just a prediction, but I could be completely wrong about that.
Well, and I think you're correct, mostly because at some point they got to figure out that they're being spied on.
I keep hoping there's going to be a major Spren fight or something. That would be cool. Her Spren gets caught spying and the other Spren attacks, and I don't know. Kind of interesting.
And Syl does whatever she was doing to those Death Spren.
I know.
Dude.
Oh.
The other thing, I love how in each of these descriptions they go into, this is how they fit into the military organization that was the Knights Radiant. Because they're the artillery, is what he said. They're the ones, when you want to carpet bomb something, you send in the Dustbringers. You
send in the Dustbringers, yeah.
But they're also the sappers and engineers and strategists.
Yeah.
I always forget what a sapper is.
Sappers are the ones who sneak... Demo.
Yeah, the
Demo?
tech.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was going to say, the way their the actual responsibility and how they progress in their order is, it actually does remind me more of a demolitions tech, because that's all about the responsibility and making sure, and double and triple and quadruple checking everything, because you are so useful, but if one thing goes wrong, you could also be the detriment of your team, which leads to one of my favorite of the maxims for maximally efficient mercenaries from Schlock Mercenary, where it says it's a sergeant who knows what's going on outranks a lieutenant who doesn't. But then it's like a demolitions tech at a dead run outranks everyone.
But yeah, engineers, again, because they like to look and take things apart to see how they work. So an engineer would be a good role.
And if you know how things are built, then you can take them apart and destroy them a lot easier too.
Yep.
The one thing that I was surprised it didn't touch on at all, because I just sort of got a feeling that this might be the case. There's nothing, it doesn't talk about much artistic about them, and I got the impression that there was something artsy a little bit about Dustbringers, just the way Mulata was not just casually
Just
like
etching in the table.
Yeah, etching, which, and it's like she was doing, because I remember, if I remember correctly, I could be remembering wrong, I think Taravangian was saying something how it was like a mastercraft of etching or whatever done in moments, because she was able to just precisely just destroy the material.
And
Right.
just the way she wanted, yeah.
And so I always got the impression they might start talking about how they also have an artistic streak, but didn't see that anywhere in here.
It's a different kind of art that not everybody would necessarily consider art. But yeah, the precision of it and that sort of aspect. Okay, so next is the Edge Dancers. And their sentence is, I will remember. And now I'm hearing 90s high-pitched ballads.
I will remember.
That's the one.
You.
So these, they specifically focus around remembering the ordinary people. I really, really like that. Just because, you have all these stories. Brandon's mentioned on Writing Excuses several times, though. Everyone is the hero of their own story. The book that we're reading is about specific people who are doing big, big things.
Yeah.
But there are other people who live at home and take care of their family. And they're not doing big, big world-changing things, but they're doing important things in their smaller world.
Yeah, in their little corner of the world. This one kind of felt like the mom, but this is probably me because I am a mom and I've been having to do a lot of momming with quarantine and all that jazz.
Never thought I'd hear mom as an action verb.
I think the proper term is mommery.
Oh, that's right. That's what it was.
Mommery. Yeah, anyway, but like it, and I'm sure dads are just as good at it, but I'm a mom, so I tend to think more that way, but the reading through it, I was like, this feels like all the mom traits coming out in me right there, which I don't always like to acknowledge because I'd like to be more than just a mom, but it's there, and taking care of people and the monotony and all the little things that you deal with when you're taking care of ordinary people in the normal household and community things. So.
The description in here only served to solidify my suspicion that Adolin is going to become, if not fully an edge dancer, something related to edge dancers, because the fact that he talked to his sword and refused to give it a name because it already had one. That's the heart of remembering.
What, remembering that it should have a name already? Just a little bit.
And also known to be caring and graceful. We've seen Adolin around Shallan. And, of course, we've seen him, he favors wind stance because it's very fluid and moving.
Yeah, but Bill, counterpoint, he, on 3 separate occasions, has shot himself. It's not very graceful.
So do astronauts.
I can't take you people anywhere.
Sorry. I'm trying to help the edge dancers out here in Adolin.
No, but it says they care for people less focused on war and they work to improve the lives of the common folk. So again, it's not the people who are making the big decisions, it's the ones who are affected by those decisions. And they're, it's just like, if there's those people need an advocate.
Yeah, well, and more seriously, to your point about Adolin, we see that he always gets along better with the rank and file, that he takes time to learn their names, that he stood up for, a whore in the middle of the Sadius camp.
A courtesan, Jordan.
Yeah, okay.
A courtesan.
Companion, yeah.
I know how this goes. I watched Firefly. And I know how this argument's supposed to go, so... Anyway, no, but to the point, he does remember the little people, and he does it quite literally in the terms of the soldiers, where he actually bothers to learn everyone's names, whereas most of the Highborn don't do it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the other thing. It says they ignore high society, but they're known as some of the most refined and graceful of Radiants.
They've
like
got
Lift.
more important. They've got more important things to do. It's kind of
But
how
it
I
does-
thought of it. Is that if they're refined and graceful, but they're taking care of business and getting all the random little things that everybody else dropped to do the big higher cause.
They don't need other people to, what's the word I'm looking for?
To pick up after them.
No, to recognize them.
Yeah.
They're very self-actualized is what I'm getting from the description. And the other thing that I really like about it is this does reference what Nail was telling Lift about the Edge Dancers, because he was sort of mocking her and being like, your order was, they were so much more graceful than you, as she's scooting around on her knees. But what I love is that when she sees someone who's really using the power properly and ice skating around on everything, and she's suddenly like, what the crap? You can do this? And
that didn't occur to me.
And I am really hoping in the next book we do get a scene or two of, now that she's seen someone else doing it properly, seeing her maybe experimenting, trying to figure it out. Because she's young, she has a lot of time to figure it out, and if by the end of this she isn't, swinging her bow staff and ice skating at the same time.
He's freezing.
Oh,
He froze Jordan.
Jordan.
Oh, I just thought you two were really contemplative on my side.
Quite. No. Oh, by the way, the word I was looking for is validation. They don't need validation from other people. The other thing, I like the concept that a lot of times a mid-sized town would have one or two stationed there. Just to sort of serve as a healer and just somebody to make life better.
And they grow, through growth, you could probably help plants and all that stuff too.
Well, and it actually pairs very well with the next point where it talks about how they tend to be the more religious of the Radiants. It reminds me very much of sort of the old school model of the Catholic Church with like abbeys in these smaller towns there to help the population. Because they weren't just there for religious, because they're also, back then, they were also the order of sort of how people got taught and everything.
Yeah.
It's almost a missionary aspect, but
Yeah,
without
that's a good way.
But without the proselyting, without the
Proselyting,
without trying to convert people, they're just there to work as just to be there as a servant.
Well, and that line, you're likely to find former religious leaders who end up bonding a spren, and that reminds me of Yim, who Nail cut down, because he was talking about religion. Now, I think he was a truth watcher, though, was his spren.
I believe he was a truth watcher, yes.
Yeah, because it was a
no,
difference from...
what it makes me think of, though, is the possibility of the Ardent that we saw who was reading the racy
Ardent Greg?
literature.
Yeah,
not Ardent Greg, the girl.
The one
I
we
can't
think
remember
of
her
as
name.
Ardent Greg, but isn't actually Ardent Greg. But
No. Ardent Greg is the guy that was talking to her. I'm talking about her.
Well, yeah, but they're going to
okay.
end up together, right? We're shipping them.
I'm not on that ship with you. I'm sorry.
They're not supposed to be shipped, remember? They're Ardents.
I'm going to ship them.
They're celibate.
Put them on the boat. I'm shipping them.
Also, again, talking about special forces, they would often be used as scouts or special forces troops with windrunners or skybreakers because they can literally slip behind enemy lines. Come on, that was good.
It was good.
It was
I
so
chuckled.
good.
I just like the idea of them making
up.
other people slick and then just sort of shoving them out of the way and just watching people just like they're on an air hockey table. Ah!
It's like in Star Wars Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Order, where you push stormtroopers off of edges just because you can.
Oh, yeah, I watched Josh play a little bit of that, and it was intimidating,
It's a good game.
but very fun.
Okay, so next, Truth Watchers.
Which
And
their
there's-
font looks like something from a Western, it looks like.
And they're saying is, I will seek truth. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
no huge
I like
revelations there, but
I
still.
like their color scheme, too, the black and green.
So their theme is more about finding ultimate truth, capital T, and sharing it with others.
Oh, and I thought it was interesting that they're very concerned with knowledge and the proper exploitation of it. Mm-hmm. That they're very against propaganda and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's also,
again,
it's not just knowledge for knowledge's sake.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing it does mention is you should not confuse this with light weavers, because light weavers are looking for internal truths, and this is more about fundamental universal truths.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but they are the quiet and most scholarly order, which matches the one representative we have.
Yep.
It's interesting. We have a lot of representatives of each order, but each one of them is a little different than these descriptions, if you notice. Mm-hmm. Kaladin's probably the most like his description, I think. But
yeah.
But it makes sense because, one, this is a very high level, from a distance description of the order. Mm-hmm. And it's also a little bit the stereotyping of the order as well.
True.
And one thing Brandon loves to do is he loves to pick out the exception and pick at why they're the exception and inform you what it should be through how much they don't fit in.
Yes. I mean, he did that all the way through all the Mistborn trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Sazed and then Tensoon and then Human.
The one thing I do think, this is a gut instinct, is I think we're going to find out that he's actually a lot more like the Truth Watchers are supposed to be than he thinks. Because we know he has a corrupted spren, and we keep expecting that to have these horrible consequences or something.
And that was the difference I was talking about.
Yeah.
He actually, the other description pretty much matches him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if this is sort of the way Brandon's going to sort of subvert our expectations a little bit, is we're thinking the corruption of the spren is important because of what it does to him, and we find out it's important, but for a completely different reason.
So he's subverting our expectations by making him exactly what we expected.
Exactly.
What we should expect him to be.
Well, at a certain point, Brandon has plot twisted so many things, it is becoming the scene with the poisoned wine and the Princess Bride.
Oh, goodness.
So you can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. I also like it says, it tends to attract scientists, scholars, and thinkers, but sometimes that just means somebody who's consumed by their own thoughts. This is like the introvert's dream. Except that sometimes they're likened to investigative reporters, so that's not really the introvert always.
Well, because, I mean, it seems with a lot of the orders, they said, they're generally this way, but they're still people with these whole range of emotions and personalities. Like, you see it with the Lightweaver, they talk about it, and with the Truth Watcher, they talk about it a little bit, and there's some of the other later orders, they talk about, yes, you have people who are super extroverted, but you also have the introverts, you know, like they kind of say that they cover the spectrum that way.
Now, at the very end, it says they tend to be the ones who hold the knowledge of surge binding and discover new advances in things like fabrial technology. Now, that sounds like Navani, which is interesting because I've seen a lot of people putting forth a theory that she's going to be the next bondsmith.
And that's one I've never bought. I bought that one. That one's never been something that felt like it was something he would do.
I haven't made a call on that one yet. I think it is something he could do because, particularly with the Night Watcher being one of them, or the sibling, since the sibling is tied to Urithiru, which in and of itself is a giant fabrial. But just that one sentence, that description is suddenly just like, wait a second. It'd be interesting, and her son is a Truth Watcher, so who knows?
The other thing... Stepson? Yeah, the stepson. But the more important...
stepson.
But the line that actually I think fits her more is the idea, the proper exploitation of knowledge. And because she never tries to stay in front of the crowd. She's never trying to take credit for things, because she's more interested in the advancement that's going on, even though we know she is actually quite brilliant.
Yeah, it's very, very Truth Watcher.
So I think it is the more likely place for her. But
I just had it for a second. I was wondering if she'd be a Dustbringer because she knows how things work and tinkers, but I don't know that
she
quite
could
fits
do
either.
that too, as much as.
But I don't know that. I don't know that actually fits. But that just occurred to me that if
Yeah, but it says they like to
know.
break things apart to find out
yeah,
how they
see,
work, and
and
that's
she doesn't
not really...
necessarily do that, but it just aluminum hat theory right there. We'll see.
Okay, so next is the Light Weavers.
This was the one I so badly wanted to be.
And theirs is
wasn't.
I will speak my truth. So their oaths are different from the others, which we've discovered as we've watched Shallan make her oaths, because rather than saying, I will do X, I will do Y, they just speak personal truths that are rather than oaths that are specific words or based around a theme. I like this sentence. Lightweavers live on the line between reality and fiction. They must be able to separate the real from the lie.
Shallan struggles with that one a little bit.
It sort of fits when we were talking about the Dustbringer oaths, and they don't get more powers until they learn to control and self-master. It seems like with Lightweavers, it's a similar thing. They're playing with a very, very dangerous ability to the point where they can get lost in it.
They can lose themselves.
Yeah, it's sort of whereas the Dustbringers, it's all about not blowing up everyone around you. The Lightweavers, it's more about not destroying yourself.
You got to understand yourself and
Well,
balance
it's
fiction
one of the
reality.
things you say a lot, Bill, in regards to English, where you have to know the rules in order to know how to properly break them.
Yeah.
That is the reason their oaths are truth, is because if they can't confront the truth, how can they possibly properly manipulate, falsehoods? They have to know it's real. They have to have an anchor.
An anchor is exactly, because again, if you live a lie long enough, you start to believe it. And so they have to be able to pull themselves from the lies that they surround themselves with.
Yeah, they have to have those anchor points to keep them centered still.
Well, it's like, it mentions that they're the spies of the Knights Radiant. It almost seems
Not all
like...
of them, but yeah.
Right, they can be. It almost seems like there's the whole double agent concept of, living among your enemy and getting to know them and just the ability to pull yourself out of that rather than being absorbed in the lie. It's a dangerous game. Honestly, when I watch shows or read books, if there's a person who's playing as a double agent, I am stressed out the entire time. It triggers my anxiety worse than just about anything else, because I'm just like, this shoe's going to drop, the other shoe's going to drop, and just so the ability to actually weave in and out and step in and out of those lies the way that a Lightweaver would need to, it's a fascinating concept.
Yeah, it'd be really tough.
Another thing that was an interesting sort of almost throwaway line was, they can be vague with oaths, and many say there is far more cultivation in them than honor. But then in parentheses, others dispute this, saying that all orders have an equal mix, despite some spren naming themselves honor spren.
Quote unquote honor spread.
But
Yes.
I really agree with this theory that they're all an equal mix, because the oaths that they make are very much of honor, but the progression through them feel so much more like cultivation.
And they are kind of the children of those two shards, so that makes sense.
Yeah, and so I think this line is actually correct, saying they're all sort of an equal mix of honor and cultivation.
And I mean, I could see some of them being more 60% this and 40% the other, different things like that.
You mean
But
like a lot of us answering these questions on the quiz itself?
Yeah, where you're like, I'm going to go with 75 and 25. But no, this one's 60-40. Yeah,
I feel like this one might be 80. I don't know.
I think I only went like to 90 on, or 80 or 90 on like one thing, and I can't even remember what it was anymore. But anyway.
I actually went to 100% on a couple, or 0%.
Same.
Oh, wow. I don't remember. I need to take it again or something.
Okay, so next one is the else color. Now, the sentence for this one is, it's an interesting one. It's not exactly what I would have expected. It's, I will reach my potential. Now, Jordan, did you say this is the one that...
Yeah, this is the one
got?
I got.
I looked it up, and it was 64% for you.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
What was the Windrunner? I remember it was above
53.
50. Okay. Yeah, I had a bunch of right around 50%, but this was the only one that was sort of strong. The anyway, I found it. I too found this very interesting that was their sentence, but it makes a lot of sense. The reason I think we get the wrong idea about them is, one, because Yesna is an Elt caller, and Yesna is the most insanely, put together character Brandon has ever created. And we know some of it is a facade that she puts on because of her station, that she feels she has to,
and her past.
Yeah,
she's had to live that mask.
But I will reach my potential makes a lot of sense given what little we do know about her past. We know that she has had issues getting to where she is, and that does make sense. But I love this line here. Just the very first one. Eltcaller O's are, like those of the Light Weavers or Skybreakers, themed towards the individual. In this case, the theme is progress, becoming better with each oath, seeking to explore their true potential and reach it.
It kind of feels like this is part of the reason I think that she and Dalinar get along so well. I mean, what is the line? The most important step isn't, the last one. It's the first one. It's the next. It's always the next step. Just continuing to move forward, progressing, just, becoming better with it, do better. That's, Dalinar has said that multiple times, is do better.
If there's a overarching theme of all of Brandon's books, that feels like that's what it is.
Yes. And I think we've talked about that in a couple previous episodes. They are regarded as the wisest of Radiance. Jordan, don't let that go to your head.
Too late. It's already there.
I like that it's not limited to a certain theme. It's just focused on improving and bettering themselves. There's all kinds of people in this order.
Yeah, they just are all striving for self-improvement.
What's interesting about it is there's a lot of overlap, you would think, between them and the Dustbringers, in that the Dustbringers are all about self-mastery. But the Dustbringers, the way it's written, it almost comes across as almost like self-mastery, sort of, and I hate to make the comparison, sort of in an Alcoholics Anonymous sort of way.
It's with them, it's a wrestle.
Yeah, reining yourself in.
It's
exactly.
The control and
it's more
keeping
about
it
control.
tightly reined and stuff.
And this one, it's more about like building. Just layer upon layer, just stepping up with each step forward. It says that they're typically the best tacticians, logical geniuses. Plus, they're soulcasters, so they can be a great little supply line. And they're also able to move in and out of Shadesmar. Now, we don't know if they can take other people with them yet, do we?
I don't know.
Well, Yasna took Shallan out with her when Shallan fell in, right?
Well, she stepped in and kind of pulled Shallan back. Because remember, Lightweavers can't fully step into the cognitive realm. Like, they don't have, like, that's not one of their they can get pretty dang close, right. But like one of the Elsecolor surges is, I can't remember the name of it. It's something to do with axial something. Or no, it's just the surge of transportation. Axial is connection. Sorry. Yeah. But like, we see Yesna literally pop out of Shadesmar when she runs into Hoyd. Yep. At the end of the second book.
I want to believe that's the sound effect too. It was just sort of a like she just shows up. And it's like, oh yes, the pop of an Elsecolor.
It's an Elsecolor. Here they are.
And she's looking around.
I was hoping pop.
And she's like, I was really hoping for something a little more regal sounding. Nope, you get the pop.
You pop.
That's a ring pop.
Would you wear my ring? Ring pop.
Okay. we can get on that tangent some other time. Next is will shapers. I will seek freedom. Now we're going to get a deep look into these in the next book, just because this is Venli's book and Eshonai's book, and they are our two will shapers.
I have a feeling I'm going to love this personally. Just this line: the will shapers believe strongly that all people should be free to make their own choices. Which it's so delicious that Venli's going to be a will shaper, given that she's the one who has sort of accidentally led her entire race into enslavement, and now she's going to try and undo it.
Exactly. Like, Eshonai was the free spirit, the wanderer, the explorer, the one who, she wanted to be a cartographer in some areas. She wanted to actually map unexplored areas. And Venli was the one who stayed home, but then started pushing and pushing and pushing. And like you said, she unintentionally kind of got her people re-enslaved by the fused.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so now she's going to be like, okay, we got to fix this.
And hide and be a double agent the whole time.
This whole thing really clarifies to me Eshonai, like, why she was a will shaper, because it's not just that she went out and made maps, because as soon as she saw what it was that Gavilar was up to, she went home. She became the responsible one, but she didn't change. She was still all about making sure her people stayed free. And we can see that, like, even though she stopped having the wanderlust, it's because her true calling of being free, she suddenly saw that was in danger for her entire people. Whereas Venli didn't have that context.
The interesting thing is, with the whole military aspect of it, it says they're focused on building, training, and making infrastructure. They built fortifications in war, which, when it comes to freedom, they're the ones who built stuff to keep things out. So they're kind of enclosing themselves, but at the same time, they're doing it so that they can remain free. It's just an interesting paradox.
Well, it's one of those things. If you can't defend yourself, you can't be free, because especially in this more feudal's the wrong word, but less modern aspect, because there's always some tyrant who, if you look like you can't defend yourself, they're willing to come over and take advantage of you.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's a very eat or get eaten world. And so the best defense is a good offense. Or in this case, the best defense is a good defense. You just want to make it look so like it's going to be so difficult to actually take your stuff that no one will try. And that lets you be free.
Yeah. I do like the idea, like, again, we've got engineers in another order, but they're the ones they build, they train, they make the infrastructure. They love building, but some will focus more on building a society. And the things that they teach are things like sanitation, bronze working. I don't know why, but that just seems interesting to me.
I liked the last line a lot.
The more I read this, the more I actually start thinking Lyran a little bit. Teaching and showing people, and
possibly.
Yeah, it's just I don't even know if he'll be a Radiant or anything. It's just sort of interesting.
Not sold on that.
See,
I almost wonder if he would be an edge dancer, though, because he's very focused on the...
See, I would think Truth Watcher.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because they also have the regrowth surge.
Oh, that's
true.
So
they're also healers.
It'd be thematic at the very minimum.
Yeah.
So.
It's interesting. Among the will shapers, you'll find both those who dress very conservatively and those who wear very daring and original styles. The common ground is both agree that the freedom to express who you are is the most important part.
Yeah, some people, who they are is more of a conservative thought, and it's just like, let me dress how I want. I won't tell you not to dress your way, and you don't tell me not to dress mine.
As long as you're comfortable how you're dressing, dressed, then that's cool. You do you kind of type.
Exactly.
Type
you do you. That's sort of like the...
What if that's what it said at the top? Everyone else, it's like Elts Callers.
You do you.
I will reach my potential. Lightweaver, I will speak my truth. Will Shaper, you do you.
Do you?
I will do me. Okay, so the Stone Wards. I will be there when I'm needed. Now, the example we have of Stone Wards wasn't actually so far isn't actually a Stone Ward himself, but he was the patron herald of them, and that's Talm. And that sentence, like, that seems to be like the defining sentence for who he is. Mm-hmm. They focus on team dynamics, working with others, and being there for those who need them, and they put the interests of others before themselves and will not bend their ideals for the sake of convenience. Again, this is Tom. This is the guy who, for 1,000 years, held firm and didn't break under torture to keep the world
stuff
safe.
like this makes me think of Mulan, the Emperor. No matter how much the wind howls, the mountain cannot bow to it.
Not 1,000 years. Was it 7,000 years?
I don't know.
I'm trying to remember. Oh,
the eons really start, blending together after a while.
For millennia. So, they will not bend.
No matter how the wind howls, the mountain cannot bow to it.
Yep.
There you go.
Very nice.
Thank you, Google. But no, I randomly had the thought that, like, reading that line and hearing you guys talk about it, I'm like, you know what? The Stone Ward feels like a lot of the stereotype guy in romance novels, because it's like, I'm the guy who's going to come and be here when you need me right then and there.
The Rock.
Rock.
Not Dwayne The Rock Johnson, but just
but he's a pretty cool guy, too.
Rock.
But, anyway. And also,
I feel like The Rock would actually be an edge dancer.
I was going to say he'd be an edge
He probably
dancer,
would be. Anyway, but you guys have seen Frozen 2, right?
No.
I know that you have, Bill.
Do the next right thing?
No, I was going to... Kristoff's line. I'm here. What do you need?
Oh, right. Yeah.
That one, it makes me tear up. It's terrible. Anyway, but yeah, like that line just, that feels like it right there, too. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Yep.
I just love that they're basically just earthbenders as well.
See, and for that reason, awesome. I actually kind of identified with a lot of the description until I got to the point where it said, they like challenges and competition, often competing in sporting events. Many like the outdoors. And I just said, nope.
They say many, not all.
This is my concern with the outdoors that no one really brings up enough. There are bears out there. And people really need to be more concerned about that. Now, on top of that, have you heard about this Daystar thing that's trying to constantly give you cancer? I'm concerned about it.
Now, Jordan, that said... when there are bears inside, that's when you really have a problem.
Yeah.
Unless they're in their own inside thing, then it's not too bad. No, my issue is usually the indoor plumbing or lack thereof. But that's me.
They're well known for their can-do attitudes and taking on big projects, sometimes more than they can handle.
I was like, that feels like me right there, that little bit of Stone Ward.
The overly optimistic who takes on they bite off more than they can chew, and then like they're halfway in and they're just like,
oh no,
oh dear.
What have I done?
But they're never flighty. If a Stone Ward is your friend, they will always be there for you. That's something that I absolutely admire, and I love it. Mm-hmm. They somehow are able to take. What?
I liked the another key attribute is they take a difficult situation with few resources and make something better of it.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely sound like the aphorism of, will a complaint make the situation better?
Mm-hmm. There's the ones that you want with you in a pinch. Mm-hmm. Also, it says they're not necessarily inventors, but they're good at improvising solutions. My immediate thought was MacGyver.
Ooh, yeah.
And honestly, the character kind of fits a lot of these descriptors. It's just like because that was kind of his thing, is he was reliable. He always just got the job done no matter what happened.
No matter what few things he had with him to do it,
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the group that was disputed with the Windrunners is who's the finer soldiers.
Yep, they're your grunts.
Well, and you can see the definite overlap between a lot of these things, between the two orders, where it's Kaladin's always wherever you ask him to be as well. And he could have easily have made an oath similar to this.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's the Windrunners tend to seem to have a lot more of, the word I'm looking for, maybe introspective moralism. Like they not might makes right, but they're trying to make sure what they're doing is right. Whereas Stoneward is more, they take a look at the situation, trust their gut, and go.
Yep.
Yeah, I could feel that.
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Bridge 4 who are currently Windrunner Squires eventually become Stonewards.
Which
Rock,
would be
Stone, you know.
Like, that would be a little on the nose, but
sometimes Brandon goes for on the nose, though.
I would love at the same look, as long as I get Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson playing Rock, and we ask people if they smell what The Rock is cooking, that's all I care about. That's all I need for this. Like, if he ever slips in the line, do you guys smell what Rock is cooking? If it ever happens, I'm just going to put the book down and just be like, well, the Cosmere has peaked.
Oh, goodness. All right. Lastly, but not least, by any means, the Bondsmith. I will unite. Their O's are focused on, and I like they're focused on unity, unification, and bringing others together. I'm just like, that's the same thing with different words.
It's thesaurus time. All right there.
Look, we all know Brandon is not exactly someone who is laconic by any stretch of the imagination.
Now, I do think it's interesting. It says it talks a lot about how their O's can take a variety of shapes. And it's just like, but there's only 3 of them. And so I guess it's one of those, because there's only 3 of them, I guess there can be a lot more variation because it doesn't average out.
There's not as much, there's not as many examples that you can pull from.
Well, and it's also, their bond with their Spren is way more unique than the others because there's only one that you can bond.
Of each kind,
Yeah, and so and we know that they're, well, we at least know 2 of them are direct splinters of their shard. We don't know what the sibling is, but pardon.
I really hope
it's got
something out about the sibling in the next book.
But it's one of these things where you have to get the approval of that specific thing, and just what the Stormfather is going to approve of is going to be very different from the Night Watcher.
Which means that they're going to have very different. The bondsmiths that they bond are going to be very different from each other.
But it sounds like they all have to be some form of unification, though.
It says that they resolve disputes and set up functioning governments. And this was a new piece of information that I had never really thought of. Sometimes they do take squires, and many of their retinues were also considered members of the order, even swearing oaths, even though they didn't bond Spren.
Yeah.
This is something that I had wondered about because we have never seen any reference to whether they could have squires or not.
Right.
And this sort of answers it, where it's like, they'll swear oaths, but they don't have a Spren.
Well, and it says that some of them take squires, but not all of them.
Yeah.
And then many of their retinues were considered members of the order. And then it says some people consider it to be the most pure form of being a Radiant because these were oaths sworn not in the names of gaining powers, but simply for the good of the oaths themselves.
Yeah. That's integrity right there.
And it fits very, very much with the... we've seen the Stormfather. He's all about oaths. And these people making oaths just for the sake of the oaths, that's something that at least he would approve of. I don't know enough about the Night Watcher to say, and the sibling we know almost nothing about. It also says that they're the heart and soul of the Knights Radiant, the most protected and highly regarded of the orders. They could do incredible things with the nature of oaths, bonds, and power. We've seen a couple pretty incredible things.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
Brandon,
all Dalinar did was clap, and suddenly it was an amazing thing.
Dalinar just sticking his hand through reality and pulling the spiritual realm and the cognitive realm together. And suddenly everything around it is like he becomes basically a wireless charger. But yeah.
Dalinar, do you got a recharge for me?
Shazam, you got a phone charge? You got a phone charge?
And it says that the Order tends to attract peacemakers, those who want to bring people together rather than divide them. I find that makes Dalinar's character arc so much more poignant. Because as the young Blackthorn, he was not a peacemaker. He did not care to bring anyone together. He was all about dividing them, both figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
So.
I'm just thinking of him when he was younger, and he was literally like, where's my knife? Because he wants to cut his steak, and then ends up killing the guy, taking his knife, and just being like, ha-ha!
Dude, he was out of his gourd that night.
Oh, that was an awesome gourd to be out of, though.
Oh, boy.
I love also that line, they're the heart and soul of the Radiance, in reference to, I think it was 2 episodes ago, maybe 3, I don't know, time moves weirdly, and where we knew the Radiance and were leaving Urithiru, we could see all the things falling apart, and we knew there was only one bondsmith at the time. And so if they are the heart and soul of the Radiance, and we know that the bondsmith at the time was dealing with trying to bind Ba'aro Mishram, and it makes sense if they talk about them, they're the heart and soul, there's only one, and that one is dealing with
occupied.
A very important thing. It makes sense that they start breaking apart, because they don't have the connective tissue between them.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks to our patrons, we are able to hold our monthly giveaways, and it is that time right now. The giveaways are always open to everyone, and they're free to enter. So for this one, we are giving away a paperback copy of Words of Radiance. Let's see. So, Jordan, if you want to give us a random number,
I can do this.
and we will.
I will do it. I will do it 9 times.
No, just once.
Oh,
We just
okay.
need one.
Just 1 second. Change something here. Okay.
We only have one book.
The number is 4.
4.
5 is right out.
Okay, the winner for this one is Jean-Marc D. So we will get that to you. We will contact you on Facebook and get that mailed out as soon as possible. Of course, again, a special thanks to Brandon Sanderson's online store at store.brandonsanderson.com. They've given us some great stuff to give away to our listeners, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, we love hearing from you, so please keep sending in questions. You can ask us about the Cosmere. You can drop us your idea for a topic you would like us to discuss during the show. You can send us feedback. Let us know how you think we're doing, how you think we could improve things, interesting theories that you might have about what's going on in the Cosmere, and basically anything else. We just want to hear from you. You can send all questions and suggestions in a brief, concise email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and hopefully we'll be able to read that as a part of a future episode. If you prefer to send us a physical letter, we do have a P.O. Box at the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, P.O. Box 970063, Orem, Utah 84097. Of course, we each have our own personal projects, so Amy, why don't you let us know where we can find you outside the podcast?
What do I do? So my Facebook is Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp, because my name is too long. My Instagram is @coincidence_cosplay, and my website is www.coincidencecosplay.com. So I just finished up doing a whole bunch of gold paint, and I did.
What do you mean
Queen
doing
Eleanor,
gold paint?
all of the spraying of gold paint, all of the paint.
Painting all of the accessories gold.
All the accessories for Queen
I saw
Eleanor.
on Instagram.
Okay, I couldn't
So
quite...
yeah, so it was like gold on so much gold. But I did Queen Eleanor's crown for my friend, as well as the belt pieces, which I designed and 3D printed. I designed them forever ago, and I printed them again for hers. And then I did. She's doing Padme's very pregnant Padme from Star Wars when she's on Mustafar, and there's like 2 little like gold belt things, and so I made those for her too because she's planning on doing that her next pregnancy.
Okay.
So I made all those gold bits for her, and otherwise
I've never heard that as a cosplay. Very pregnant anything.
Very well. I mean, there's like other there's like if you do like for Star Trek, like original Star Trek, you can do an alien and say like Captain Kirk was here, or other things like that. And there's also the Chica from Emperor's New Groove, and there's other pregnant cosplays you can do, but they are more limiting than the non-pregnant ones. But anyway.
It just sounds like, unless you are pregnant, it sounds horribly inconvenient.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're gonna go to a convention and you still want to dress up, then it feels better at least to do one that fits with your body shape.
You're less likely to want to go as Slave Leia or what have you.
Yeah, there are some people who are still that confident, but I'm not one of those people. So, yeah.
That is some legendary confidence there. Okay.
There's also like guys who do it. There's like a guy named like the Bearded Leia. That's always very interesting. Anyway.
Interesting. That's an interesting word to use there.
Indeed.
It's got a beard.
So on that note, Jordan, where can we find your work?
Far away from bearded Slave Leia cosplay, let me tell you. You can find me on twitch.tv/splicestream, and I have been streaming a lot of Amiibo content. I actually got into a little bit of arts and crafts last week. I was painting Yoshis on Friday and Saturday, doing it for Amiibo, so, that's interesting. It hasn't gone well so far. It's, we're learning things, and by learning things, we're making mistakes.
It sounds like a garage band, painting Yoshis.
It's my Neon Trees cover band. We only do 8-bit synths, though.
Okay. All right, have you gone through and said where they can find your stuff?
Yeah, I did when apparently everything froze.
Clearly.
So
all right.
Later on, you can hear it.
And when I am not here, I do have another podcast. I've got a friend named Dylan, and we have a weekly podcast about board games. It's called The Innkeeper's Table. We've got several episodes up. I think we just posted episode 5 last week. So episode 6 should be coming up this week. The most recent one, we were talking about mainstream, like mass market board games that you might still see on a hobby gamer's shelf. So, just so even though it's aimed at a broader audience, it's still really, really, really good. It is available on pretty much any podcast service, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, pretty much anywhere you look. So go ahead and listen to us on all those different places. You can also check out our Instagram page at Innkeeper's Table Podcast. There is a direct link to where you can find the audio there if you prefer to just listen through a browser. I do have a bunch of board game reviews over at www.innkeeperstable.com, and I post about games on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the profile at Innkeeper's Table, which is separate from at Innkeeper's Table Podcast, but both of them are worth checking out, I feel. For those of you who want to support the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies podcast, but you can't become a patron just yet, we would love it if you just let your friends know about the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and to like and subscribe over on youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. Before we head out, any final thoughts on all of this info dump that Brandon so wonderfully gave us this past week?
Oh man, it's really interesting, and it's going to be really cool to see all the new information we get in the next book, as well as just
I'm so excited.
All the other speculations and word of Brandon's and Raffos that he gives out, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot more questions about things once he does his next book release.
Yep.
I've been spending a lot of the time trying to think of what characters I like that would fit into these things, and I immediately, for some reason, thought of the Disney Atlantis film. What was it called? Journey to Atlantis?
Oh,
and I decided
it's just Atlantis.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah. Well, I thought of Vic there, and I'm like, oh, he'd be a good example of a Dustbringer that I like.
Oh.
Is he the demo guy?
Yes, he is.
I think he Yes.
Look,
Does
I
he
made
also
a
have
bridge.
the
It only
giant
took me
fork or
like 2
something?
seconds.
The paperclip. He has the paper clips, doesn't he? Or is it
Yeah.
a different guy?
I don't.
It's been so long since I saw that
All I
movie.
know is
It's been
his
a while.
favorite line. It's like we've done some bad things, but we never hurt anybody. Well, I mean, nobody we knew.
He has a giant paperclip. I remember that now.
Oh, man. All right, well, in addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, our listeners can find our videos on YouTube or the audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us and contact us through Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile at Cosmere Studies. For our next episode, we really, really will be talking about board games, I promise.
Unless Brandon decides to dump a ton more lore just in the middle of nowhere for no reason.
And then we're obligated.
If he does, I will not complain. We are going to have our previously promised discussion about Mistborn House War by Crafty Games. We all played this together on stream a few weeks ago, and while the video has been up for the last week just for our patrons to view, the video is going public tonight, so go take a look at that over on our YouTube channel. Then join us for the discussion in 2 weeks on June 29th at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time at 10:30 p.m. Eastern at www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. Until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember, there's always
always
another
another
secret.
secret.